Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time, the inner light. Yeah, not four lights, not four, just the one, the inner one. The inner light on It's All Been Tricked Before. Hey, be our inner light. Follow us on Facebook, It's All Been Tricked Before. Spelled just like it sounds, just like it looks, whatever podcast device you're listening to this on. And also be our light, patreon.com/IEBD. You can also be our inner light. And now you can listen to us talk about the inner light on It's All Been Tricked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome actually here.
Yeah.
In the same room together. If you're on Patreon, you can see that. Been a while. Been a while. So, we're gathering live and in person because we hit a very important episode. The Inner Light. First impressions on the Inner Light.
Well, I mean, as we went along, I was pretty sure that I had seen it before. As you know, I've seen a lot of these, and I can just sort of like barely remember them. And I don't know. I think I was somewhat distracted by the thought of when is the shoe going to drop? When are they going to give the answer? What will the actual stakes have been? That sort of thing. And we get to the stakes thing as we go. And you had mentioned, like right before we're starting, that there were some similarities with. I'm not sure.
Universe Journey.
Yeah, can't remember what the episode was called exactly with the multiple.
A Life Well Lived.
Well, there we are. So, and I also immediately thought of an episode of Buffy that was sort of like that. What season was that? Like 5 or 6.
I don't remember that one.
The one with the asylum. Actually, yeah, the trio. That's right. They did that.
I remember the asylum. I just didn't see the similarity necessarily, because it's not like she lived in the asylum for decades. It's just like, you're crazy, your world doesn't exist. But I get the comparison of Picard thought that at first a little bit, maybe.
We talked in previous weeks about how this one's one of the most highly regarded. Is that I don't know how regarded episodes. Yeah, I can see why the story it's an interesting take. I joked last week, I think, when you described it, that it's Paradise Syndrome. Yeah, we've seen this episode. This one has a little different take, and I love the way the time jumps happen, and I think waiting for what's the deal here? I'm still not sure it was an awesome, now it all comes together. But I think the emotional weight of it and just that concept of him living the lifetime in 25 minutes is the more interesting part of it than what we actually saw, which is not to discount it. I still thought it was a good episode. I will say what I've said many a time. I don't think it hung the moon or whatever of Catan, but I did like it.
It hung a probe.
Most of my notes are positive, though. All that said. Yeah, I'm not saying I didn't like it. I just wasn't blown away by it, but man, by the time we get done, maybe I'll rank it number 1 of all time. Crushed City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it beats City on the Edge of Forever, quite honestly. I do like it a lot. Most of my notes are positive as well. I'm almost the opposite of you, I guess, is that I do think it was really, really good, but there's a little bit of hesitation on just a couple of things. So not the opposite, but just kind of a different take in the same stance. I did see this was a Hugo Award winner. Star Trek has won the Hugo Award only a handful of times. In the original series, they won for The Menagerie and for City on the Edge of Forever.
Oh, well, there you go.
For Next Gen, they won for this.
Which would probably be my 1 and 2.
Right. For Next Gen, they won for this and for All Good Things, which is the series finale.
Okay.
So that one is also very well regarded when we get to it. Yeah, it's definitely won some awards. I mentioned I thought the song had won an award, but I don't see it in here, so I don't think it did. But the song, what is widely regarded, it's on even the records that are just sampling Next Gen soundtrack, and they did a full orchestrated version of it for the 30th anniversary.
Interesting.
That we'll get to. There were other Star Trek episodes nominated for Hugos. For original series, The Carbonite Maneuver, The Naked Time, Amok Time, Doomsday Machine, Mirror Mirror, and Trouble with Tribbles all got nominations.
Okay.
For Next Gen, only one of their episodes was nominated for a Hugo, and that was Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot, which is not one of my favorite episodes.
So in case like me, there are some people in the audience who don't feel like looking up the Hugo Award again. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing it as a kid, but I don't remember exactly what it signifies.
Ooh, DS9 was nominated twice but didn't win the Hugo for Trials and Tribulations and The Visitor. The Hugo Award is a prestigious science fiction award. It's an annual literary award for the best science fiction and fantasy works.
Literary.
Which I think, as this, in my mind, it was for book or whatever, which doesn't make sense since we've watched an episode. But it does make sense that part of me was like, oh, this would work even better as a novella or a novel or a short story or whatever.
It would have been a heck of a short story. Yeah. I agree with that. So we start out
like a 25-minute story.
It actually took place over 40-some minutes, though.
That's right.
Even counting out the beginning and the end when he's fully in the 24th century, I think we still got more than 25 minutes of that story. But anyway, Picard is hit by this probe at the beginning of the episode, which does not seem unusual. Thank goodness it wasn't a little tiny light that came onto the bridge and went inside of him. That would have made this...
Thank God.
I would have knocked it down 3 spots just for that, I think, in the rankings.
Well, that would have been called the Outer Light instead.
The Inner Light, the title is actually a reference to a Beatles song, The Inner Light.
Yeah, I can't remember. I thought I mentioned that last week, but I don't remember because that was a week ago.
The B-side to Lady Madonna.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, Riker catches Picard, and he's like, I have you. And I'm like, this would be a really good time for Riker to like, oops, I dropped him, now I'm in command.
Wow. I don't know. Well, we've probably talked about it a little bit throughout the seasons so far. It doesn't feel to me like he would really want that to happen. I don't know if he's looking for. Not even just because he wouldn't want to hurt him or do it at his expense. It just doesn't feel like that's his goal at the moment.
Yeah. No, you're right. It just dripped my head. So Picard wakes up. He's being called what? Kamen. Picard thinks he's in the holodeck. Which, again, if it was a holodeck episode, inferior. But
yeah, and I knew there's no way a holodeck episode could be one of the best ones of the entire series.
I don't know.
There is the Sherlock one that people like.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
More than other people. No, I think I did end up liking that one.
When did he say holodeck?
Like almost right away.
Yeah. He tells the computer to turn off the program.
Right.
Restart the program.
Which makes sense. That is the logical place your mind would jump to. Picard then starts to play along with this scenario because it's clear he's not making a headline.
Right.
Yeah. And at that point, it felt sinister to me. It felt like somebody was doing something mean to him or bad to him.
Yes.
Really?
And that's not the way it ended up going. But there was a period, and I think the music was pushing us to think, oh, it's something bad that's happening. And I'm like, cut it out, music. That's not what's going on. I mean, I knew that wasn't what was going on, so it was jarring to be like, why does this feel sinister?
What, new to what extent?
What do you mean?
Or, like you said that you knew that it wasn't going.
I knew what this episode was. I know the story of this episode. I knew it was a probe putting the life into his mind.
Wow. All right, but that seems like it would affect a lot of things. But
yeah. Picard's curious. I like when he's talking to his wife, and he's like, can I ask you some questions? He's asking about communication, he's asking about planets. She's like, don't you want to know about us? And he's like, sure, whatever you want to tell me. In a way, it's like, no, I totally relate to that, because he's concerned with the situation and the science. But at the same time, it's like, ooh, Picard, that's a little heartless.
I thought, and I would guess eventually he got to this, which would have been like, well, you know what? Let's talk about when we met. What do you remember?
Yeah.
Because and I think I've mentioned this on this is one of the things I fight against in my entire life, all facets of my life, is people, especially in entertainment things, being like, hey, remember that time we did this? Yeah, I do. And then the person goes on, remember this part of it, and this part, and this part? Yeah, I told you I remember. I was there. And obviously it's an exposition, but in this instance, they did go through that. But in my mind, that's what he would have done, would have been like, well, let's talk. Which is something I think couples do, whether it's an anniversary or remembering good times at least. I guess they do that. Remembering bad times. You remember that time you did this, but I feel like in this instance, because she was so very happy with him.
She was.
Before he got a little weird on her.
She was being patient, I guess. Maybe.
Yes, she was very patient, I thought.
Yeah, I have more notes about their relationship further on, but yeah, this initial onset. Yeah. She ended up being way more patient than she should have been, in my opinion. But.
I was trying to think of that too. I mean, obviously, the part of me is like rooting for him, like you can do that. You know, you're gonna figure it out through this. You should be nice to him. But the other part of me is like, I don't know if I would be.
So, do you think he's really that patient, or do you think she was locked into the scenario that was programmed?
Wait, that's what I couldn't. That's where I'm a little murky on.
Like, if you wanted to divorce her and move on, would that have been an option?
Yeah, that's what I couldn't. And maybe that makes it more interesting. Because
Kamen was a real man. You got that from this, right? Kamen was a real person that went through these experiences. Now, they weren't the exact same thing Picard would have done, but he was a science guy that pushed against the administration and against the situation, and that's why his memories were chose to put in there.
Okay.
But
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was his wife. Those were his kids, Kamen's. But obviously Picard's, the details of the dialogue aren't all Kamen's. Picard definitely had a free will aspect, and I don't know how far that free will went, or if there were parameters he had to stay within.
So since it was kind of like a holodeck.
Yeah, I made a similar note about that.
I wouldn't have been like, hey, I need to get back to my spaceship. I think I'd have been like, tell us. I was talking about, tell us about when we met. And, oh, hey, remember that? Remember when we got married? Mm-hmm. Or whatever. Where was it? Oh, where was that place we went? What's your dad up to? What's he been doing? You know, that kind of stuff.
I mean, just out of curiosity or trying to play along or the whole,
trying to just figure out where I am and that kind of stuff.
While trying to pretend like you weren't actually.
Hey, do you have any books or a computer around you? I mean, that would have been the first thing.
So their level of civilization was a bit confusing.
Yes.
It felt like a Starfleet colony in that there were a lot of things that were advanced. They had hospitals, they had surgery.
Right.
They clearly had manufactured furniture and goods and plates and things, but they weren't spacefaring. So it was almost like a 1950s level of technology.
It was, and
pre-space race.
I've said many times, like, I don't think every planet would evolve the same. So there might be a planet where, like, we figured this out, but we didn't figure that out and that kind of stuff. But I did write down, I was like, oh, it's another weird stone structure. Mm-hmm. But the inside looked a little more modern.
Yeah.
With tile floors and
their
furniture.
Government was sort of a republic, I guess.
Yeah, and again,
there was citizenship participation, but it didn't seem straight up democracy.
And I thought for a while that they were just their own little city set off.
But they were part of like a larger state.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
So that's the only civilization on the planet is that one little.
That's
spot.
what I thought. That's what I thought at first.
No, they definitely mentioned more going on, which I appreciated because many of the times we get such that locked in.
I still didn't. These things still happen to me when I'm watching these episodes. Though maybe I missed something. I still didn't get the sense that there was an entire global society of any sort, or different countries, or anything like that.
I thought so because. Well, I mean, maybe I'm just. You're right, they didn't go into enough detail to know that for sure. They only mentioned other cities and that they were all under this guy's purview. But I guess I just was like, okay, well, there's definitely other stuff out there we're not hearing about, so there probably are other countries and whatever, although this seemed like the America, the more scientifically advanced of them. Picard's an iron worker that plays the flute badly. That's what Kamen boils down to. But we never see him work any iron. We just see him be good at playing the flute.
In science.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, iron worker? Did she say iron worker? Mm-hmm. But I will say this. Patrick Stewart looked jacked for this episode. Like he was very veiny. His arms.
And so they had kids after they'd aged a while.
Right.
Patrick Stewart already felt kind of old. And not to knock against the woman playing his wife, but she didn't seem super young either. So either maybe biologically they have kids later.
That's what I was going to say.
Or because they're in a less advanced society and Picard's working iron, he just looks old early.
I think those could both be correct.
Well, let's mention, since you brought that up, I noted that they didn't mention anything about Picard's accent or his mannerisms or anything. They just it was just he was just being folded in seamlessly as though. Yeah. And that, of course, that's probably part of the program as well.
Yeah.
So he would have resembled himself to himself, or whatever.
But did that civilization seem advanced enough to have a program like that? That's the thing.
Right.
Like, to write that type of program and that type of...
They had a missile, they had that. But
they talked about communication and being able to send communication over distance. But at the same time, it's like, this is advanced technology.
Right, but we didn't see any transportation kind of vehicles or anything that.
That is probably... I don't know why that didn't occur to me. That's probably like the biggest hole I would see right now is that... This would play into something else that I was going to bring up later. We've already touched on it. We were wondering what it was actually possible for him to do. Mm-hmm. Like, could he? How far could he deviate from that track if he'd wanted to? How far did they program out? So some of the things they might have omitted were purposefully to keep him from being able to do certain things.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Also, though, those villages were clearly designed for foot traffic, not car traffic, which is more advanced than us, I would argue.
Right, I would agree.
So maybe they already moved past the stage.
Yeah.
And just didn't look at space.
Along those same lines, I thought, is he in a Sims version of The Sims? And that's what this episode is about, which again I guess is similar to Holodeck or whatever, but for a while I was like, because it felt like that, he has his family, he builds a missile or whatever.
Well, the first clue that he wasn't like just tossed back in time and living on the planet, the first big one I think was when his wife Elaine Eline is how it's spelled.
Oh,
okay.
Her necklace matched the probe
that
hit him.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, there's something there. Let's talk about his wife for a minute. Margot Rose played his wife. Mm-hmm. She's best known for this role, according to IMDb. The movie 48 Hours, A Civil Action, Desperate Housewives, 65 credits. She's not somebody I recognize, and it doesn't look like she's mostly guest spots in TV shows. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't seem like she ever really took off as an actress, but I thought she did fine for the role.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense that she would be with Cayman or Picard or whatever. Sure. It seemed to make sense.
Then we got an Enterprise scene, which was so weird and bizarre and took me out of it. And I was reading that Michael Piller, who was a producer at the time, or maybe he was even showrunner by now, I don't remember, but his comment on the script was they should have ditched the Enterprise scenes.
I thought we were never going back to the Enterprise.
And I agree. I think this episode would have been so much stronger without the interspersed scenes.
Which scene?
Give the rest of the cast the week off.
Yeah.
Which scene were you thinking of?
Anytime they went back to the Enterprise in the middle of the Picard story.
Yeah, because I think all you need is the end where she's like, I can't remember Crusher Records like, well, you're gone 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Or you were out for 25 minutes. Because all of Crusher's stuff was like, we can't separate them and blah, blah, blah. And, which I thought was, I was like, wait, that's your solution? It's like, well, we got to stay attached to this probe until forever. But in my mind, I will say this, the going back to the Enterprise made me think more time had elapsed. Because that's why I was like, you can't just keep doing this forever. But if they just did it for 25 minutes, like, oh, okay, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Then that makes sense. But
I would have rather not known that time wasn't really passing.
I agree.
I mean, the Enterprise scenes really were pointless. We had Riker yelling at Crusher for no reason. And then cutting off the beam almost kills Picard. I really wanted her to put Alpha, Riker, and Worf in their place. Like, see, I told you not to cut it off.
I wanted her... Well, and that was where... Briefly, she was my most annoying for the episode because I was at the time I was like, wait a minute, what's your solution though? Mm-hmm. I mean, give me a little more on this. Okay, I'll start the beam back up, but somebody's got to get. And I think that's when they actually decided they were going to go and check it out or whatever.
But at this point,
maybe I thought they should go check it out and they didn't.
At this point, he's been out of it 5-10 minutes,
right? That's true.
She was just arguing, let's find out more before we do anything,
and that's fair.
I think you can give it more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. That I agree with.
I mean...
But I thought it had been like a day or two or whatever. They're like, we're not even going to move his body.
Even had it been a day, you don't know what's happening. Let's wait. Maybe if it's been a few days, a week, we can start talking about taking action.
That's where I would have started that. I don't know if I would have started the clock that early, but I would definitely have been like, well, what are we going to... At some point, we got to do something. What's our alternative? So
we have covered all of my Enterprise notes until the end because I did not have that many.
I don't know that I had that many either.
I had just the one. It was something similar. It's just it seemed like right away they were doing that thing with Worf again, where it's sort of like the D&D barbarian kind of thing. Like, we should destroy the probe immediately. Just take it out.
To be fair, I had the same reaction.
If they had blown up the probe, it might have killed Picard for all.
It might have, but we don't. That's a lot of that stuff's very, which is fine. I don't need to know the inner workings of how that worked, but.
I mean, I liked at the end that they didn't end up destroying it. They put it in the cargo bay and they were going to study it, which is what they should do.
That makes sense, yeah.
It's what they should do.
Yeah.
So the first time, after Picard's first scene, we go 5 years and they look older. And that's when she is really arguing that you should drop it.
Uh-huh.
And he comes to the decision of, you're right, I need to drop it. Let's have a baby. Which, again, like, if he's just getting over it, that seems like a quick leap. But I know they only have so much time to tell the story. Right. And honestly, 5 years is enough time to be like, you know what? Whatever I think's happened doesn't matter anymore. I've been here 5 years.
I thought, that scene I thought was interesting because she's like, you've never talked about anyone else that loved you. And so I wrote, I've never had someone I was involved with be like, why haven't you told me more about somebody else who loved you like I do? It's like,
tell me about your exes.
Yeah, do you really? No one's ever, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that.
Well,
their culture's different.
It's not quite the same thing, though.
Well,
this is more like, what do they have that I don't?
And it might also be, it might also be, in my instance, the situation was, I don't want to hear another word about your exes. So that's definitely a different...
Yes. Do you think the civilization looked human? Or do you think that was part of the simulation?
I was trying to decide that too.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I don't know. There was no clues one way or the other.
Yeah.
This all, again, depends on how advanced the programming would have been, because I don't think that...
And we can't consider it that advanced. Right? The fact that the program even exists seems a leap for them.
But I would still go back to the argument that maybe that was for a purpose. It was to put up those virtual walls so we couldn't...
Because they put it all in his brain. Like, they weren't... He wasn't creating the world. They were creating it in his brain. Right? Yeah.
Well...
Or...
So do you think I'm wrong when I say Cayman and this family and this life really existed and this was all simulation? I mean, I think the flute at the end was supposed to be like the ultimate, yes, this was real. But...
It's much more interesting if all that stuff stays with Picard.
If we really start pulling at it, because it would have had to have been interactive in some way, because it was getting essentially free will choices from Picard and responding to them. So there would have had to have been some sort of AI involved, unless they could have possibly accounted for every single thing that he could have said or tried to do. Again, that would be one reason why he would remove transportation, other signs that there are ways to communicate off-world, and all other things like that.
It really makes me want to get into their head and figure out what they were thinking when they did this.
Yeah, well, I wrote...
And were there more advanced parts of the planet, and then they just picked Cayman for whatever reason?
That's true.
Because, this is all more advanced, and so we've got this technology, but really the technology is not helping us. Let's give you what looks like the peaceful, ideal.
And I think those questions are the things that I think make this such a high concept. And I think that's why people like. I mean, there's obviously an emotional thing there too with Picard at the end and stuff. But I wrote down, Freud, his theory on dreams on length. He talked about a little bit because you'll have. We've all had that thing where we wake up 15 minutes before the alarm, we go back to sleep, and then we have a vivid REM sleep dream that seems to cover a much longer period of time. So in my mind, that's what happened is whatever the program was, that's as long as it was supposed to last. Yeah. And so, but they wanted to get all that information in there, but it only took 25 minutes in his brain. So it was like they were planning, they're like, oh, we're done here. And that's when he woke up.
And then they skip. Or, the scenes we didn't see maybe didn't ever happen. They just implanted memories.
Oh, yeah, or that,
Because then the 25-minute time frame would make sense based on what we saw. Like if it was all real time and there were skips.
Yeah. And I love the time jumps. I thought those were, I think time jumps are always... Especially in improv, they're good. But
you could just tell how time had passed because the toupee on the side of his head kept getting crazier and crazier. Until at the end he was in some Nudie and Soon level makeup.
Yes, he was.
Believe it or not, this episode was nominated for an Emmy for makeup.
All right.
It lost to an episode of Deep Space Nine.
It was definitely better than the Noonian thing.
I don't know about that.
Oh, you know what? Maybe no, I think it was better than that. I was also thinking of the
Deadly Years.
Yeah, the Deadly Years episode of TNG, yes. Or, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see some
Counterpoint.
similar old age makeup on Picard in the series finale, spoiler alert,
Okay.
with the straw hat, too. But, because there's an action figure of that. But, yeah, the makeup, I guess, for the time may have been good. Today,
Right.
it would not have done anything.
In the age of...
I just think it's interesting that this was considered one of the best makeup jobs of the year. That the Emmys were recognizing it.
Yep.
And the DS9 episode that won, I remember that one, and that one does have really good alien makeup, so I get why it beat it. Because this was still a little weak to me, but...
Well, here's a couple things I'm still thinking about as far as how that goes. Or not just the makeup, but I mean just the time progression and so on. So at the beginning, they're showing us that it is sort of like... When they're showing you the strategy that they're using. They know that he is humoring them. Mm-hmm. And they respond to it in a certain way to keep kind of nudging him back to this track, like you have to really play along and invest yourself, or we're not going to let you advance. Essentially,
Okay.
And maybe that is the way they kind of corrected or trained him in going forward with it. But at the same time, those video game style time jumps that were happening. Mm-hmm. So you're doing this, Assassin's Creed or something else, and you're playing. You get to the point. Okay, I've got that checkpoint. Now here's a cutscene
to the next level.
Here we are 5 years later, but he was responding as though he certainly had lived every day of it.
Yeah,
and
I think he thought he lived every day.
Yes,
you think that's what they just somehow convinced him instead of actually doing it? I mean,
I would think so. I mean, I don't know. Your brain can move really fast, so maybe he did live every day. But I think it would be simpler to just implant memories. Like, let's run the simulation long enough to then play out what he would be doing. I don't know. Let's talk about fashion.
Fashion, that's where I started.
This planet loves tie-dye, don't they?
They did, yeah.
In a different color in every time period.
And they allowed for chest hair, so we can see that Picard chest hair showing.
And those guns.
And
he left the phasers behind when he brought his gun.
He did, man. I was just like, man, he is jacked. Yeah, it looked good. Because at first I'm like, what is going on with his veins? I'm like, nope, those are his arms. He's just... Maybe he did a bunch of...
Wouldn't you if you were going to be like...
Yes, well, you beat me to it. Because I was going to say, whenever I've had a role on stage where I have to show my arms or whatever, trying to look like the guy who's supposed to be in shape, I'll do 50 push-ups before we go on stage. If I have to.
I think in the films they let him get more action hero and they show more powers.
They do, yeah. Because, I mean, how often do we see them in the series? Not that much.
As much time passes, the 4 films they did take place over like 10 years. So that's a lot more time covered than the 7 years of the series. Which always weirds me out because I'm like, oh, they were on the Enterprise E for like 10 years. Yeah. I remember them on the Enterprise E. They just did those 3 films with the Enterprise E.
Yeah, and if you're doing a movie, you can definitely be like, all right, I'm going to take these 3 weeks. Yeah. Work with a trainer. Okay, really in great shape. But he looked great here. I also thought when he first woke up, he was in sleepwear. Because he always has great sleepwear. But it turned out that's just what people wear for everything there. Yeah.
It makes sense if he's been like in a fever for a week, he should be in sleepwear.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. And then he opened it on the Enterprise and I guess he closed it to his jacket, which he should just have that all the time.
Yes.
It looks so
like
good.
Kirk's wraparound shirt.
Yeah,
it looks
exactly.
so much better than the uniform. I like the stuff with the drought and the symbolic tree that everybody gave a little water ration. We, modern America, could use some community lessons from this civilization for sure. When Picard was going on about, we need to build atmospheric condensers. I'm like, why don't you just build your own? Who cares if they want to do it? And then at the end, he's like, we're going to build our own. I'm like, great. But then it didn't seem like he ever did build that. Yeah. So
they probably pulled him away from it in some way as well.
I don't know.
But that also another question would arise for the problem they were having on the real planet. Were they capable of having built something like that?
I mean, they built this AI, so I would say
they got the beam, they got the things, they got the probe, they got.
So did they actually put all their resources into doing this because they were absolutely certain they were going to die like a Krypton thing?
Maybe. It's not clear. And these aren't plot holes. It's just you only have so much time to tell the story. Right. But if you got rid of the Enterprise scenes, you'd be able to tell a little more.
So, is I almost called him Catan, but that's the name of the planet.
There's
the
the
name of
Settlers of Catan.
I was going to say, I was thinking about it, and I looked over here, I'm like, that's what I was thinking about the whole time, every time they said it. Did Kamen come up with not only the missile, but the beam and the other stuff? Because
It did sound like he came
they ended
up
up
with all
explaining it
that,
to
but-
him.
Yeah, no, I don't think he came up with that, but he was certainly involved near the
Yeah.
end. Or he was chosen for some reason
Mhm.
to be like the representative of civilization.
Maybe they're just like, hey, we need you to build this missile to do this, and they did the rest. Somebody somewhere else did. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he built the missile, but
Oh, that's right. They just wanted him there
yeah.
to
And he'd seen it before and helped with it.
connect the
But
dots.
I
That's
don't
right.
think he built it. He was too old at that point.
So you were joking about something during the episode when they certainly implied they were getting to the point where they were going to be intimate or something, and it begs certain questions for me. And this is the things that people are probably wondering about at home as well. So it's like they had that 5-year jump. During that time, were they supposed to have been intimate in some way before then?
Seemed like it.
And
They'd only been married 3 years when this whole scenario started.
right. So, but I mean, what I'm saying is that Picard at some point had to say, "I'm here, so I'm going to play along to this extent," or I don't. I'm going to be here for a long time. I'm going to go ahead and fall in love with this person or something.
I mean, I don't know if he ever fully fell in love with her. Well, I think he did love her
Yeah.
at the end, but that 5-year jump, it seemed like they'd been intimate. He just wasn't giving her emotional.
Well, I guess Kamen definitely got intimate, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
that all happened.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is, I think you're starting to get to where I was thinking too, is like this, were they pulling from his memories to actually have graphic sex for the person who's simulating this? So are they beaming that into his head as well?
Yeah, the graphic sex. That's
Yes.
why they skipped over just implanted. He did, I don't know if he got good at sex, but he did get to get good at the flute. He played Frere Jacques, which is the same song he was singing to the kids in the Turbolift Shaft.
That's what I thought. I was like,
Yeah.
we've had this Frere Jacques conversation before.
Well, it's copyright free. And then they wrote
That's what I
him
was
a
going to
nice
say.
song to
That's what I
play
was saying.
later.
For us, too, so we
Yeah.
can sing the whole song if you want to.
Yeah. When he says he's not being fair, and he suggests having the baby, which was, she says, well, you're a good husband. He's like, no, I'm not. She's like, well, you've been kind. You've never, raised your voice at me. And I'm like, that's your bar? That's a low bar. I mean, most husbands should be kind and not beat their wives and stuff. Like, they need to give a little more than that.
Maybe it's what the village is like, It's like maybe that's what Kamen was actually like, and she's like, "You're different than Kamen." No.
That's what Matai was doing in his house.
But okay, going back again to the sex thing.
Yeah.
It's just. Did you ever see Strange Days, the movie?
No.
With the
Yeah, but it's good, right?
grapevines.
Is that a good one?
You know of it?
Yeah, with Angel Bassett.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the premise is that the drug of sorts in that movie is a simulation where you have like a brain net, you're wearing it, it records your memories and all your sensations, and then someone else can put on a device and watch it like a video, but they're actually feeling and experiencing as it's happening. So I'm just thinking the end of this project that they were doing to put this probe in there might have had to involve something like that to put everything in there quite that exactly. So it's like, by the way, we're going to have to take all your memories of all the times you're with your wife, and you could just, I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
And,
So by the time they're having kids, they're all old and gray, which again could be a biological difference.
Things are different on
Yeah.
Catan.
Now he's really old, and his friend died. We didn't talk about his friend yet. Bataille, who was played by Richard Reel, yes. Who looked very familiar.
Yes, you might remember him from Office Space. He was Thomas Mikowski, the Jump to Conclusions.
Oh, wow.
He was also in Casino.
In Casino, yeah.
He was in Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo.
Yep.
He was Bob Bigelow, the father.
Yeah.
He also starred in The Man from Earth, which we have not watched for this podcast. I should put on our list, but we've talked about before because that was written by Jerome Bixby.
Oh, okay.
And I do have that movie. It's a very interesting movie about an alien that's getting ready to leave, and it has a Star Trek alumni in it as well.
It's weird. It was weird to me because I was like, that is Richard Reel. Richard Reel? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, that's him. And then 7 years after this, or 6 years after this, he's the old beaten down guy. So credit to him to be able to play, be versatile.
I mean, he's got 413 acting credits.
Yeah, he
still
works.
active.
Yep, he works. He's a good actor.
Yeah, lots and lots of stuff. I don't know that he ever landed a big starring role, but he sure works. He does do 2 episodes of Star Trek Enterprise.
Okay.
As the same character, so he'll do 2, and he does a 2-episode arc on Voyager as well.
Okay.
Not the same character.
Not
as
the same
this.
character. Okay.
Same character in both episodes.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right, that's all right.
No.
I can't wait.
Not-
This
Yeah, I was
is
like, wow, I did not want to know that.
No, not Patel. No, he plays Seamus Driscoll in 2 episodes of Voyager, and he plays Dr. Jeremy Lucas in 2 episodes of Star Trek Enterprise.
Okay.
So
yeah, he's definitely a that guy kind of guy, character actor.
No Seinfeld credit though.
No, I was like, did he have one? I looked, but no. But who did was the guy who played the administrator. Shoot, I had his name.
That's why you seem familiar too, I think.
Not
Scott
Jake. He was in the Seinfeld finale. He is the officer that arrests them for not helping the guy getting robbed.
I never would have thought
and filming them and making fun of him. So yeah, I knew him, and he's got a ton of credits too.
He has a brief role in the Voyager pilot.
Okay.
As a different character. But yeah, he did a bunch of episodes of ER. It looks like he's best known for Prison Break, Jag, Dark Skies, NYPD Blue. But he only has 68 credits, so like the wife.
Yes, oh my gosh.
Like the wife, it seems like he didn't take off. He was just in these couple of things.
Yeah.
Not huge. He is still alive, but, and he still has credits from recently.
Yeah.
He was an episode of The Blacklist last year. But, yeah.
So speaking of him,
yeah.
He
was also on TJ Hooker, one of his first roles. Tie it back around. Sorry, Keith.
As I was still trying to pick at it, am I remembering this right? Am I remembering this is going to happen? Mm-hmm. When they mentioned the administrator, and they led up to him like that, and they started with his back to him and everything, or the back to the camera. I almost thought it was going to be Q or somebody.
Oh, that would be interesting.
I thought it would resemble somebody that Picard actually knew from the other life or something. But
that would change the story, but it'd be interesting.
I thought Bataille or the administrator was going to be sinister. I will give them oodles of credit for that. Of just like, all right, we let this thing be what it is. Like they didn't put there wasn't a threat on a threat. Like even the Enterprise was never really threatened, and Picard, neither version of Picard or Kamen, neither one was threatened. So it was more of like, well, what is the deal? So
except for planetary extinction. So.
Well, we live there now. So.
It definitely felt like the administrator was going to be an antagonist from that first conversation.
Yes.
When Bataille was like, nah, that's as good as it ever goes with him. Fine.
Yeah.
And then we saw him in the old age makeup later, so we know. And they ended up, apparently they put a lot of the extras in old age makeup as well, so they could be consistent with the people you were seeing.
Nice.
All 12 of them.
just like every planet.
Yes.
But at least gender was binary there.
Yes. Before we figured out what the deal was, I wrote that Picard's dreams consist of bureaucratic holdups and marriage problems, because I didn't want to write nagging wife. And then she said, I know I nag you. I'm like, okay, let's put nagging wife down. This is what he dreams of? But it does go back to the thing we talked about, or I talked about, last weekend during Paradise Syndrome. It was Kirk's The Life That Could Have Been. And actually, Kirk mentions it, I think, in The Naked Time. To go all the way back. Actually, he mentions it with Carol Marcus, too. Mm-hmm. And Eve. He doesn't necessarily say it, but he thinks it, and he alludes to it. But so I thought it was kind of that thing, too. And I think that is part of the... At the end, I think that's the other part from Picard, too, is he has had this view of, this is the life I could have had. Because I think he alludes to it while in character as Kamen. So I think that's another thing that does give it... That's another level that gives it some depth.
Oh, yeah, you said, I always thought I wouldn't have wanted kids. But now they're great. They're the best. Yeah.
Speaking of his kids, I do want to mention Daniel Stewart, who plays his son, Bataille. Mm-hmm. Only 12 IMDb credits. That counts as an only. So not hugely known, but among those credits, he did 5 episodes of Blunt Talk with Patrick Stewart.
Oh.
He also has credits for playing himself in 2 Star Trek documentaries, Captain's Table and Captain's Close Up.
I did like that they were giving him male pattern baldness as in the one time jump. I was like, okay.
I think that might have been natural.
So you think that was he was wearing a toupee in the other scene, and then the later scene they were just like, take the toupee off.
Yeah, I think so. So, Picard, of course, has a scientist daughter. I looked up her. I didn't see anything to talk about. So.
I didn't either. Yeah, she's from South Africa. I did find that.
Where was the son from? The adult actor for the son?
Oh, that son. I thought you meant the son.
Daniel Stewart, he is from England.
Okay. Yeah, see, it did sound like he had sort of an accent.
I thought he was trying to put on the Patrick Stewart affectation. Yeah.
We learned the star system's been dead for 1,000 years. Oh, early in I think Keith alluded to this, that I mentioned the intimacy, that after the first 5-year time jump, she's like, this is the last time I'm taking your shoes in. I'm not going to take your shoes in for you again. And I said out loud to you guys, I don't believe it. And then 25 years later, she's like, I took your shoes in for you again. And then when she's dying, she's like, you're going to have to remember to take your shoes in.
It was a nice callback.
I like that thread, though. Like, you got to have those moments in the marriage. Man, they got very old. They really made him look old by the end. I like the son as a musician and Picard accepted him. Because I think that's a callback to how Picard's father didn't want to accept his dreams in life. Yeah. I think there's that parallel. The wife's death was moving. I know we didn't get to know her that well. I agree. But it was effective. Even knowing that the whole planet's going to die and the kids and grandkids are going to die too, it was nice to include the death scene. Yeah. And I liked Picard playing with his grandchildren even though he was totally senile and his memory was gone. I thought for a second he was going to, like, hallucinating because then he saw his friend and his wife and they both looked young again. But no, that was the program explaining everything and how, this is our civilization and we wanted to carry on and this is how we chose to do it. Which I'm glad that, we had some explanation.
Yeah.
It was needed. This did need to be a more lasting experience, though. I feel like very similar to the original series episode where Uhura loses all of her memory. If you've spent 40 years on a planet or 50 years living this other life, you're not... Yes, it's going to come back to you, but for a minute, you're not going to remember who that lieutenant at the security is that you don't really know. Yeah. And you're not going to remember how this works or that works. And I just think, being 38 years old now, I can't imagine being dropped back into my childhood and having to figure it out again.
God.
So, I do think it's disappointing, and I think Rick Berman, the exec producer, said the same thing. Like, we just didn't want to do a serial television, but maybe we should have with this episode because,
My last note sequentially, and I do have others I didn't get to yet, was how will his mind reconcile having lived an extra 50 years, and it's like maybe it would be like the dream, as we were saying. I noted that. You wake up and it starts to fade like that, but that would defeat the purpose of what they're trying to do if you can't recite this is exactly all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if they were advanced enough to do this, supposedly, they would probably design it so that it could last as long as he needed it to. Yeah. But at the same time, that should be maddening, right? I mean, having that much time in your head.
Yeah.
And then I hadn't even thought about the idea of just like, people who were gone for 10, 20 years from anywhere like that. And they're forced... I couldn't go back to doing a lot of things I did like just 15, 20 years ago.
You could, but it would take you a beat to get back to it. Yeah. You couldn't just pick up like nothing and left off.
Maybe you mentioned this, I zoned out, but his son in this is his son.
What?
That's Patrick Stewart's son.
What?
So maybe your male pattern baldness...
Daniel Stewart.
Yeah. Yeah, we all just like...
Thank you.
Yeah, I was looking at something else, like, let me click on this. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
It looks similar. Like,
because I said that I think he was trying to sound like Patrick Stewart. It's like,
that is
okay, well, I guess he didn't have to try that first.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
A little bit weird because he has so few acting credits.
That's
this role. But now looking at a picture of him, like a recent picture, maybe like Patrick Stewart.
Yes, they
do. I mean, look at the face.
Okay. There's some.
So, interesting. The flute ending was great. Both seeing the probe and him playing it again. We will see that flute again. Look for it anytime we're like in his office and stuff, but they'll call it up on the screen. And in fact, in the final movie, Star Trek Nemesis, there was a scene that minorly featured the flute that was cut, so it's not in the movie, but even into that movie, he still has that flute, and that still carries with him.
I did find one thing on Jennifer Nash, his daughter in this. Her father will be in an episode next season.
Oh,
Tapestry.
Nice. So. Tapestry also considered a great episode and a Picard episode.
Oh, all right.
I was wondering why the aliens decided aliens. Why
the Tanians.
Yeah, the people on this planet. Why, or I guess probably just this village, chose to do this as a strategy.
Yeah, I wrote. Why did they just bury a time capsule?
Or something in the probe itself. Yeah, so like a disc. A movie.
Yeah.
How they know their wave was going to be compatible with the brain of whoever found it.
Right.
Oh my God. Now you just keep finding things like that, and it's just going to...
Which would indicate that they were pretty human-looking or seeming.
Well, and was it meant for Picard, or did it just happen to hit him?
No, I think it just happened to him. Okay. I don't think it was meant for Picard. Right. How would they have had that foresight at that
That's why, yeah.
Now, regarding species looking similar, because so many species look similar to humans, that is something Next Gen will address before we go off the air. Okay. Like an actual in-continuity explanation on why so many aliens look so similar.
Interesting.
Universal translator.
No, but I'm actually kind of glad that they wrote it into continuity because, they do all look for the most part. I mean,
some
we get
kind of humanoid. We have
especially now, we get some really interesting aliens, but for the longest time, all you had was a little prosthetic.
Yeah.
Let's put some bumps on the nose.
Except for the Medusans. But everybody else.
Yeah, but man, the Medusans, I'm so glad we get to see them now in Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah.
Like, seeing a Medusan the way it... it's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so, alright, so you're making this thing, and you're going to hijack somebody's brain. Why not just have it like a little classroom or something and say, hi, this is why we're here, sorry about this. Just watch this video real quick.
I was going to say,
it's not as meaningful.
Insert tape now.
Like Riker in Encounter at Farpoint, where he had to watch the video to catch up on it. No, it's just less meaningful. You think we needed a scene of Picard watching the video like Encounter at Farpoint? Here's everything for the last 5 years you may have forgotten. This is Q. This is Beverly. You have breakfast with her.
Yeah. I thought the probe was cool looking. It looked very simplistic. It looked very TOS, for lack of a better thing, but it still was like... Yeah, I still thought it looked cool, though. Yeah.
Perhaps it was actually designed after her real necklace. I mean, that would be interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Real, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Let's see, what did I have? When he came back into the house for the first time, was just still kind of in denial, and just, this is not my life! Had the angry version of Once in a Lifetime. Let's see. I actually kind of like Beverly's analogy about the knife that I was coming back.
I did too, because that did help me convince me, like, okay, you know what, you're right.
Yep.
I still want to play in B and C and D, but she's right.
Yeah.
And that Picard graduated beyond public domain music and learned exactly one song on the flute. First recital.
It was a great song. I mean, I liked the song. I thought it was very effective as a song.
And another thing about the simulation. I mean, could he have died? I mean, is there some way that he could have even killed himself if he wanted to? That have ended it gracefully?
I don't know.
Been like, wait, no, wait, we'll tell you. Wait. Had you been at all familiar with the answer, Stephen? As for like what was going on and why?
No. So I was.
When did you figure it out, or when do you think you figured it out?
I mean, not until they really were just like flipped over all the cards and like, here's what's going on. Even when Bataille starts talking to him, I'm like, what's going on? And then the daughter, like, oh yeah, we did that. Or not the daughter, his wife comes out or whatever. Yeah, and again, I keep saying, why didn't they do that earlier? But really, again, it was all 25 minutes in our universe. But in his brain, I
was certainly helped along by having seen it before at some point. But I don't think it really clicked exactly until they hit that Enterprise scene where they mentioned the name of the planet and said, oh, it's been going, I was like, oh, I was already getting there. It was like 1,000 years. Yeah, all right, there it is. And so, to what you were saying earlier, it would have been, I don't know, I think it might have been better. No, it almost would have had to have been better without the Enterprise scenes for those reasons alone, I would think. Just had to have absolutely no idea why this is happening.
And just to go back to our technology question, I guess if it was like and this will be the Star Wars part of the podcast, it was a planet that looked like Coruscant, where it's all this technology or whatever, maybe people would have been like, well, they would have figured this out. They would have had to. They would have just. They would have figured out how to avoid the supernova, or they would have just gone to another planet, and they'd have been fine if they had space travel. But since they didn't, they in-betweened it or whatever. But, so I guess that makes sense. I mean, we shot Voyager into space with the message of hey, of peace and love, and we want to talk to you or whatever. I guess it should have said, "Come save us."
And
but they might come conquer us. And if Star Trek: The Motion Picture is any indication, Voyager will be back. But
there are certainly a lot of things that we can do right now that would be technologically advanced, but without having warp technology on our real planet. So we're probably going to get to a point where we could do a simulation almost that.
Yeah, and I imagine there's still places in the world where if you have a cell phone, people are like, "What? Is that?"
That's a good point. I mean, there are probably very few at this point, but there are probably some places in the world that would say, "You have a toaster? What's that?"
Right.
And that's way less advanced than the cell phone.
And I don't really understand what a super collider does. But it's here.
What about NFTs?
So my last note was that...
But I've got $50,000 invested in cryptocurrency, so...
I hope you're joking.
I am.
Unless it was you spent $10 back in the day, and now it's $50,000, then you're a lucky SOB.
One of these days we'll try to figure it out, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't got there.
Last note was that Picard actually was playing the video game Cayman in Blips and Shits. From Rick and Morty. So... And I love it's... Oh, the thing I didn't write down. So that ending, which I really had some mixed feelings about. I found it amusing in certain ways. Mm-hmm. The tie's back, his wife's here, they're doing this thing. And Picard just started to have that reaction of like, I feel honored to have done this. I finally figured this out. I was right. Something. Mm-hmm. And that could have gone so many ways, you would think. Mm-hmm. If this is a real person having, their free will and having been put through this, wouldn't your reaction be like, what?
I also thought...
Why would you do this?
He thought he was imagining that he was seeing his old friend and his wife. That's what I thought, too, at first.
But sort of, wouldn't that have angered you to some, maybe? Or?
I mean, I think it makes sense for Picard as a character that it didn't anger him. But... yeah, I can see some people being angry about it.
Yeah.
The episode was directed by Peter Lorretzen. Peter Lorretzen, we have seen on the Star Trek 25th Anniversary VHS tape. He was actually a producer for Next Gen, only directed 2 episodes. This, and another one that we haven't seen yet called Gambit, Part 1. And then he'll direct 1 episode of Voyager Lineage. It's a crossover with Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier.
I'm trying to set up.
But he's a producer for Next Gen as well as all 4 Next Gen movies. He's a producer of DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, and more recently he was a producer in Chicago Justice, Wicked City, and The Mentalist. It was story by Morgan Gendel, who, after writing this, a few other television writing episode credits, does write 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, and then one of the Tech War TV movies, actually a couple of the Tech War TV movies, and one episode from the rebooted series in the 90s of Tech War.
Did you ever watch that? I don't think I ever did.
Only a little bit.
I didn't either.
It's on our list that we should check it out.
Yeah.
He's also a producer on The 100 and Drop Dead Diva more recently. Morgan then did the teleplay with Peter Allen Fields, who was a writer for Next Gen and DS9. Wrote Half a Life, which was...
Oh, yeah.
Loxana's beau.
David Ogden.
Who wrote the other half?
And Cost of Living, which was Worf's suicide episode.
Oh, yeah.
So those are also emotionally moving episodes. Kind of makes sense. He'll write 10 episodes of DS9 as well. Cool. Including my favorite episode of the series. Huh. So he has a story by credit for that, not teleplay by. So, pretty good. Alternate episode.
Mine would be that, I'm not sure if this works. I didn't think it all the way through, but in my mind, the Enterprise is beaming the Picard's life into Cayman's head, so they remember them.
That's so weird. That just popped into my head, like right before you said. I was thinking like they switched places or something, and Cayman's body's on the Enterprise, walking around.
Based on the architecture and clothing, my first thought was they should have made this an I, Claudius crossover. There with the Roman Emperor. Which would not have been a good episode, but the original series would have done it.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
So let's get to the rankings then. And who was your annoyance of the episode? We're not going to rank kids' annoyance because they were in so briefly.
Oh, yeah. I flirted with Crusher as my annoyance, but then she justified it. I guess the administrator, because he was kind of bureaucratic and slowing things down early, but it sounds like he came around.
I'm going with Riker because he pulled alpha male when he shouldn't have. And
That's
just
fair.
listen to Crusher. Come on.
I can't call him most... Well, you know what? I'm the most annoying of the episode because I was with the Riker at that point. I was also with Worf. I was going to pull it up at first. This might say something about my advancing age.
I'm not sure about that. I would have almost said Bataille at the beginning, simply because of... I guess I understand the purpose of it, though. The programming. Let me finish a sentence here first. So, when he was being evasive before about answering the questions, like, I better get the doctor. Just answer the question. I'm just asking you a question. I'm not about to faint.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Is it whoever programmed the simulation is your annoyance?
Maybe. The committee involved in that. I think I needed to be there. So...
Committee that programmed the simulation. Okay. That's a strong choice.
I have a lot of questions for them. I think we all do.
Who are we going to have a drink with?
Cayman's daughter, whatever her name was, she looked like, and it wasn't as close as I thought. I just looked at the date with her. Maribor, yeah. So I dated a woman. She's a woman, a young lady at the time. I was a young man at the time, who looked a lot like her up until about a year or so before this, or maybe a year and a half before this. So, yeah, she reminded me of her. So.
St. Patrick's Stewart could be your father-in-law.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
And his son would be my brother. Wait, no?
Brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law. That's right, yeah.
I would say still the committee, or at least or the real villagers, or somebody there to go like, what's going on? How did this actually work?
I'm going to put the committee for you. I'm going to have a drink with Picard. We need to break this down.
Yeah.
I want to know about it. I want to know how much he remembers. I want to know what it feels like. I need to get into... I'm really curious more of what's going on.
Between his Borg experiences and this, there's a lot going on in his brain.
Man.
Yeah,
And
the Borg stuff pays off a lot more than this.
Yeah.
This pays off more in subtle bits, but yeah. They should have tied this into Star Trek Picard and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they will, season 2.
Yeah, that's true.
By now we'll have seen season 2 by the time this episode comes out.
Doesn't feel like it. Oh, hey. Yeah.
Ranking the episode, I'm going to put it up against Iborg to start, which I said was my favorite of the season so far, but we ranked it 3.
That's right.
Because I think, it's a very focused character story with an interesting concept.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, they're similar in makeup. I think this one's better than that one, but I think they're both very strong. I would put that at number 2 for the season and this at number 1. But right now, just against Iborg.
I'd put it below. I mean...
You go below Iborg?
Yeah. They set us up to say, all the awards, and this is most highly regarded, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I feel like maybe they raised my expectations. Yeah, that's just kind of...
So I had never seen this. I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've ever watched this episode. I knew a lot about it, but I hadn't seen it. And it met my expectation. I mean, there were a couple little gripes, but I'm good with it.
I think the more we talked about it, I found so many more just like...
Okay.
Strong, yeah.
As much as I said it didn't hang the moon, I think I'm going to go above.
Keith, below is Redemption Part 2, where the season premiere where Worf tried to...
Didn't you already decide above?
Yeah, but for
Just
you,
for
would you go any lower?
Sake of conversation.
Redemption.
Would you go lower than Redemption 2?
Perhaps. I guess
Ensign Row?
Yeah.
You go lower than Ensign Row?
Yeah, just things that have... I think the other things had more lasting impact in the continuity. As
The
far as
Perfect Mate. Famke Janssen.
See, that seems pretty comparable in a way, doesn't it?
Really? Okay.
It's another Picard in love with.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
actually in love with. Well,
That kind of thing. Wow, actually, I might go below that. It just...
Jesus, Keith!
Yeah, I don't... It just...
Cause and effect.
What kind of monster are you?
I know. It was the time loop episode.
No, this is above that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can rank it number 7 for the season. Many people rank it number 1 of all time.
Yeah, I don't... That's
Wow.
I mean, they're wrong on that.
Wow.
I'll tell you that right now.
number 1 of all time?
Of Next Gen.
Still, I mean... It's,
I'm looking back at what we have of Next Gen. I'd have it in the top 3 for sure. I think Family, there's a good argument to be made that Family would go above it from last season, Picard dealing with the after effects of the board. And maybe Measure of a Man, but I wouldn't put anything else above it.
you Measure a Man, I mean, just...
I love Measure of a Man. Yeah, this is definitely my top 3 so far of the series. So I would put it above Unification 1 and 2. Would you put it above Unification 1 or 2?
Those are our top 2.
Yeah. First one's... Part 1's the top one. That's the more Sarah kept.
Right.
And then part 2, Spock, was the second place.
I would probably go under. Maybe
Under
under just
both of them?
contrarians, yeah.
I think because Keith was willing to go so far, that's where we got to put it.
I'm a contrarian and a nostalgic. There's a nostalgist here, so.
See, Unification 1 and 2, they were good. They were
Yeah.
better than the other stuff we've seen that season, but I don't think they deserve the 1 and 2 spots personally. I really don't.
Are we...
I'd have at least 2 episodes above them.
I like the concept here is, I mean, and it is also well executed too.
Okay.
Not
Well, I put
ideal.
this as number 3, so
Are we going to be doing the season end tonight, or...
if we have time.
We'll see.
Next week, Time's Arrow. Captain Picard and his archaeological curiosity are called upon by scientists from Earth when they find evidence to support beliefs that aliens visited Earth in the late 1800s.
I thought this was science fiction.
Oh! And while it does not say it in the title here, on the DVD it says Part 1. So, season finale cliffhanger, which has become an annual tradition for
Dun,
Next Gen.
dun.
Until then, live long
In your dreams and prosper.
in multiple lives.
Oh, I wasn't sure if I should save it for the next one. It's more relevant. I was literally thinking about that right at that second. Should probably write it down, actually.
Okay.
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?